Hi guys, my name is Alicia, and if you've been watching me for a while now, you would know that I not only make thrifting videos every week, but I also run my very own vintage shop. And over the years, I've given you guys tons of tips and tricks in different videos on how to run and start your own reselling business. But the one thing I feel like I've kind of always left out is the nitty-gritty and maybe like the not so fun parts of reselling. Because I feel like a lot of people don't realize just how much work it is. And over the years, there have actually been multiple different people who have come to me and said like that I inspired them to start a shop, but now they've gotten to the point where they realize they don't really want to do it anymore for whatever reason. And they usually come to me seeing if I would like to buy off all their inventory or something along those lines. And I just can't help but feel a little bit guilty that maybe I didn't properly prepare people or give them a really in-depth view of what it's like and whether you should even start in the first place. Because I never said it was easy, but I feel like people don't quite grasp exactly how much work it is. So if you're someone who's debating starting a reselling business and you're not sure yet, this is the perfect video for you because I'm going to be prompting different questions and kind of giving you a breakdown to see if this is really for you or not. Because I don't know, I feel like it takes a very special person to do this. And I'm actually going to give you guys a full breakdown of exactly how much money I made last year to kind of give you an idea of is this worth it? How many hours do I have to put in? How much money can I potentially make? So first off, I just want to say I think there's this really big misconception about reselling that just because it's very accessible doesn't mean it's easy. In my opinion, reselling is one of the most accessible businesses that you can start because you need very, very little cash to start. Arguably none. Most of us already have clothes in our wardrobe that we could potentially sell. So the barrier to entry is very low. So it is accessible, but it's not easy because there is a lot of work that needs to go into it, which you really need to realize, do you enjoy this type of work? Of course, most of us, if you're watching this video, you probably love thrifting. So that is kind of the easy part. That's the part that everybody enjoys. That's the part that I guess everyone thinks about when they think about reselling is the thrifting part, but there is so much more that goes into it than just the thrifting. So for example, do you like taking photos? A majority of your time is going to be spent taking photos, whether that's flat lays, whether that's modeling. Do you enjoy this process? Have you tried it? I personally really like this part almost as much as thrifting. I think it's really fun trying the clothes on and putting outfits together. Do you like doing laundry? That's a huge part of a secondhand clothing business is doing a ton of laundry. It's not my least favorite chore, but I definitely would say it's not the most enjoyable. And then of course there's listing, which I feel like is everybody's least favorite part. It's just really tedious, writing out your listings, putting in your photos, but it takes a lot of time. Same with managing your inventory. Shipping is a huge part of this business, which once again, very tedious, pretty annoying, very time consuming. I can't help but think of this one TikTok where a girl just straight up canceled her Vinted order because she didn't feel like shipping the item. So these are all little things that really add up. And then there's bookkeeping on top of it. If you're running a proper business, you need to keep track of all your finances. And once again, that takes a long time. So you kind of need to be prepared that you're not just going to be thrifting, you're going to be doing a lot of stuff on the back end as well. The next question before you start reselling, do you have the space? I think I've done a pretty good job of storing all my items within pretty small closets and under the bed and that sort of thing as someone who doesn't have a ton of space. So it's definitely possible if you live somewhere with not a lot of storage, but sometimes you have to make sacrifices, It basically just means you're gonna have less room for your other personal items. Ask yourself, is this something I have the space for, or is this something I'm willing to sacrifice some space for? Because I personally feel like to really get the ball rolling on your shop, you need to have at least 100 items. Probably want to be closer to the 200 item mark. So you're gonna have to put those somewhere. The next question you're gonna want to ask yourself is, do you have the patience? I feel like people don't realize that reselling is so much of a waiting game. So many of my items don't sell for weeks, months, sometimes even a year it takes to be listed before they sell. So you can't really expect to list a bunch of items and expect them all to just sell right away. It's kind of a waiting game. It's a bit of a snowball. You list every week. On week 2, you're finally selling some items you listed week 1, if you get the idea. You definitely have to have a bit of patience and don't expect all of your items to be selling right away. The next question you want to ask yourself is, do you have the time? I personally resell part-time because I have a separate full-time job, and I would say I usually dedicate about roughly 6 hours per week towards reselling, and I'm not gonna lie, it takes up a lot of my free time. So for me, this is something I'm really passionate about. It's something I really enjoy, so that's not a big deal for me. But you gotta ask yourself, do you have that time in the first place, and is this time you're willing to sacrifice? Because reselling is basically the exact opposite of passive income. It's probably one of the most active businesses out there, because it's not like you design a t-shirt once and then someone's manufacturing them and you can just place an order to create more. When an item sells, you gotta go out there and find another item to replace it. And there's so much work that goes into each individual item that cannot be replicated down the line, if that makes sense. Which is why I think it's so funny how some people love to make assumptions about reselling being like for lazy people or just to get like quick money, because there are so many other businesses you can get into if you're interested in that. It's just something that you have to put your time in over and over and over again. The next question you want to ask yourself is, do you have the talent? I feel like a lot of people don't realize, like, you need to have a certain kind of creative eye when doing this, whether when it's picking out the actual clothes or even photography. Like, you do need to have a little bit of skill. Of course, a lot of this can be learned, but some people just unfortunately don't have that. Like, I think a lot of people think they can just walk into the thrift store, pick out whatever items they like and sell them, which is honestly what I did at the beginning. The first time I entered a thrift store with the intent to resell, I just picked out random shit that I liked and then was like scratching my head why it wasn't selling on Depop. Like, you kind of have to follow the trends, see what people are buying, style it in a particular way. It's not as simple as it seems. And there's kind of two avenues you can go down when reselling, either reselling vintage like I do, or reselling brand names. They're kind of two totally different ball games, where I feel like selling brand names is a little more straightforward. You usually don't have to style the items, they kind of just speak for themselves. Whereas vintage, you kind of have to put in a little bit more effort to make that item desirable. So if you are going to go down the brand route, that takes a lot of research of figuring out what brands are in style, are popular, have the resale value, which is something I personally never really cared that much about and never bothered to like really do the research. So once again, like I said, these things can be learned, but you're gonna have to put in the effort to kind of experiment and figure these things out. And I feel like the last question you want to ask yourself before getting into all of this is, do you have an exit plan? Once you've accumulated, maybe hundreds of different clothes, and you decide you don't want to do this anymore, what are you going to do with everything? Are you just going to take the loss and donate everything? Are you just going to slowly keep your shops open for the next year or so until, there's not much inventory left? Like, have a little bit of a plan and be prepared for that, because I even think about this, like, one day I might not want to do this anymore. And I think personally my plan would probably be to just bring all my items to a market, sell them for really low prices, maybe even just like the original cost I bought the items for, and then maybe take the loss and donate the rest. So have this plan, because I just don't want people to buy up a bunch of inventory, be unsuccessful, and then be at a loss. Now that you guys have a little bit better of an idea of what it's actually like behind the scenes, I'm gonna give you guys a little breakdown of my sales last year in 2022 and kind of like how much time I put into it versus how much money I got out of it. So keep in mind that these numbers are based off of the fact that I have an average sale price of about $30, meaning that like usually I sell my items for around $30. And my cost of goods, which is how much each item cost me at the thrift store, comes out to an average of about $5. So if you sell your items for more or less, or maybe you have a lower cost of goods because you live near a Goodwill outlet, or maybe you have a higher cost of goods because your thrift stores are a lot more expensive, these numbers can obviously vary, so keep that in mind. So in 2022, I ended up selling 403 different items, which is quite a lot. It's honestly my personal record, and that was with me listing about roughly 9 items every single week. I'm pretty sure I did a story sale every single week. I think I maybe missed like 2 weeks. So last year I really went hard. From selling those 403 items for the whole year, I made a gross income of $13,600, which right off the bat sounds really impressive and sounds like a lot of money, but of course, that's not how much money I actually made because there's quite a few expenses. So from that number, we have to subtract all of our fees. So all of our Depop fees, our PayPal fees, our Poshmark fees, that gets taken out immediately. Our shipping price, because of course, each item needs to be shipped, and our cost of goods. So the price it cost me for each of those items I sold. So after all of that, I actually ended up making $7,972, which is honestly really good. I'm really proud of that. So not bad, but keep in mind, I do have other business expenses, which once again, I'm not going to include because they're going to vary depending on how you're running your business. Do you have a car? Are you paying for gas? Are you writing off your phone bill? All those little things are really going to depend on you. Whereas all the other expenses I included are stuff that are pretty like set in stone and are associated directly with the sales. Also keep in mind that this number is generated before taxes. This number is more of an estimate, but we're going to stick with the idea that I made around $8,000 for last year just on reselling. So like I said, I usually listed about 9 items per week. Multiply that by, let's just say 50 weeks out of the year. That means I probably listed around 450 items, which is a lot. But that's really good because it means I ended up selling 403 out of those 450 items, giving me a 90% sell-through rate, which is honestly really amazing. I'm really happy with that. But once again, keep in mind, this was my 4th year doing this, so it's not like I was starting from scratch. A lot of the items I did sell weren't necessarily listed that same year, if you get what I mean. This is kind of like a snowball effect from last year, but still very good. So how much work did I have to put in to get these numbers? These numbers are kind of guesstimations because it obviously varies each week, but on average, I'd say I spend about 2 hours thrifting each week, 1 hour taking photos, 1 hour creating listings, 1 hour shipping, and roughly 1 hour for my bookkeeping. So let's say on average, I worked about 6 hours per week. I also ended up doing 4 markets this year, about 10 hours per market. So adding all that together, I estimated that I put in about 340 hours, which is honestly pretty generous. I feel like I probably would put in a lot more than that, but I also really enjoy the work, so there's a little bit of a balance there, which means that I would have technically been making around $23 per hour, once again, before taxes. So personally, $23 an hour is more money than I've ever been paid hourly, so that's a lot of money for me, considering I'm making it doing something I really enjoy. And that means I was generating about $600 extra in cash each month, which to me is a lot of money. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of your potential of money to make and how much you have to put into this. But it's a very hard business to scale. This is always going to be kind of a small business because, like I said, you have to be very, very active with it. So if after hearing all of that and reselling still sounds of interest to you, I have tons of videos of my tips and tricks and how to get started and all that. So I really hope this gave you guys a more realistic view of what reselling is really like and gave you a better idea of whether or not this is actually something you want to get into, because it takes a lot of time to start up. And like I said, it takes a special person who's very passionate about this, in my opinion. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.